Dillingham. I work at Community Shares of Greater Cincinnati. We are a partnership or coalition of local nonprofits who has a mission related to social justice, economic equity, or a healthy environment. So I'm standing here today to speak sort of from the social services sector as we talk about local responses. So as a social worker who's done a lot of advocacy work and also taught at the college level about the role of social workers as activists, right? And so we know that social work practice and program delivery in the social services sector is inextricably, I knew I was going to say that word, inextricably tied to the political realm, right? So how we give out services, from Medicare to Medicaid, to Social Security, to health care, it's all completely tied into the political, because it's those folks that are elected and appointed that are making decisions around how we share our resources, right? And so what we've seen is that, I know in the field of social work, there was, in its early days, we were the activists, right? We were out there fighting against child labor law, fighting for child labor laws and such. And then over time, as we institutionalized, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and all the things that we had fought for, now they're coming down from the government. So social workers were hired to become the conduits from the federal government to give out resources, right? And so we became sort of these, givers of resources. And it was really sort of removed from the political, right? And even today, there is a fear among social workers to really participate politically and to get out and write op-eds or take positions on candidates because it's like, well, I work for this hospital or I work for the VA and I have to be careful. In fact, there's some rules as employees that you're not allowed to be political, right? But I feel strongly that as a professional social worker, we have a code of ethics. And in fact, our code of ethics tells us that we are compelled ethically to participate politically, that we must understand the political landscape and participate in it and be advocates at that level, right? So, although I work for a bunch of nonprofits, and then I think about what's going on in DC, many of the nonprofits that we work with have been active before Trump, will be active after Trump around issues of reproductive health choice, around LGBTQ equality, around affordable housing, around, we help fund the League of Women Voters, who help try to educate, get people out to vote more, right? And so as we were out there in the streets at the protests, as I was out there, I got to see a lot of the friends in the social services sector coming out, showing up, lending their voice. One example, we had a rally for public education. This was at the heels of the appointment of Betsy DeVos, who was notably a billionaire with no public education background, who has a legacy of privatizing public education in Michigan. We were protesting that. We stood, a few hundred people came out for public education. And there was GLSEN. GLSEN is one of our member groups, talking about the importance of safe and supported spaces in schools for youth who are LGBTQ, right? Standing up, a youth actually spoke of her experience of seeing the school as a safe space and how important that was for her. And so the Women's March, essentially the Women's March was like two women who live in the suburbs of Cincinnati who saw this, knew about the national march and said, we should do something locally here. And within 3 weeks, there was over 10,000 people in Washington Park and an incredible march, right? And so subsequent to that, these two women actually were in my office a couple days ago at Community Shares, and we're going to be working with them to provide a fiscal relationship where they can raise money and Community Shares can help act as a fiscal agent for them. They don't want to create a whole new nonprofit. They don't want to create another institution, but they want to continue doing the work of supporting bringing our bodies out into public spaces, and that takes some infrastructure, right? You have to have permits. You know, I mean, you don't have to have a permit, but it's recommended. So you should have permits. And so, for example, they were just sharing with me how they just got a permit for Fountain Square for the April 8th rally protest. It's about economic justice and you know, details to follow. But the point is, Community Shares is supporting this nonpartisan work of giving support to local groups who want to continue this incredible momentum of getting people, everyday people, people who don't normally maybe participate politically or to actually show up and march together. I stood in front of City Hall a couple weeks ago. It was the refugee immigrant rally. It was really cold, and there was hundreds of people standing in front of City Hall. And again, just to Brendan's point, I mean, that is so important to show that the general population, that there's many, many of us who denounce, you know, what we're hearing out of Washington, D.C. So I want to just read a couple of quotes about this denouncement. There was an article that came out where a reporter had sort of cataloged all the public responses to the immigration actions happening. And I just want to read a couple to share with you. And this one is from a woman, Director Kate Kendall, who works for the San Francisco National Center for Lesbian Rights. And I'll just quote her. "Today's executive orders on immigration confirm our worst fears, that the Trump administration will pursue inhumane, costly, and ineffective policies that will do nothing to make our nation more safe. Members of the LGBT community are in every community, and they are targets of violence and harassment. The orders issued today will only make these individuals more likely to suffer. These fear-based policies will not make any American more safe, nor will they improve the lives of citizens. Rather, they will cost millions of taxpayer funds and terrorize already vulnerable communities. We must fight back, resist, and engage to stop these reckless measures. We are a better nation than one that exacts intentional harm on those seeking to improve their lives." It's just one. I'll read another one. This is David Huerta, president of SEIU, United Service Workers West. "In appealing to fear, cynicism, and hatred, the orders signed today are as unpatriotic as they are counterproductive. The working people of SEIU California reject these divisive actions and stand united in our resolve to defend the dreams and contributions of immigrants and the promise of justice for the oppressed." I'm getting emotional too. This is really powerful, and my point in just sharing those couple quotes is that we have leaders from various sectors standing up, denouncing what they're hearing from the White House, and I think that's so important. And let me just leave you with an article from The Nation. It was called "All Resistance is Local, a Plan of Progressive Action for the Trump Years." So it's a really great article. It's in The Nation. And the subtitle is "Here's How States and Cities Can Lead the Fight Against the Trump Administration and Build a New Political Order." And the points made in the article are encouraging, right? One major point is that as hard as it is to control Washington, it's even harder for Washington to control the rest of us. So it makes this interesting point that, yes, lots of memos and orders and laws may be rolled down out of Washington, but ultimately, the states and cities have quite a bit of power and quite a bit of history of whether they're willing to follow what they're hearing out of Washington. I'll just quote it. "Many of our most important national policies, those related to the environment, healthcare, insurance, transportation, energy, and the workplace, are implemented by elected state officials and appointed state administrators, not to mention the myriad of local institutions. Sometimes these arrangements are written into federal law. Some just evolve in practice. For example, federal drug policy can't be enforced without the help of local police, prosecutors, and juries. Federal education policy requires the assistance of state and local agencies, school boards, and teachers. And finally, federal immigration policy depends on states and localities serving as the federal government's eyes and ears. So the point here is that we may balk and we may denounce what we're hearing out of Washington. And that's good. We have to come out and denounce that. And then at the next level, which is fighting back or implementing or not implementing, we know that we have great power at the state and local level of how we respond and implement what we're hearing. And another point, the road to national power runs through the states. Republicans knew this quite well. And in fact, we've talked about ALEC as another topic here in the past. But it's just some great points and some encouraging points on how we can respond to what's happening in DC at the local level. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you.